All right, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to Bali Unplugged podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by BaliPropertyFinanced.com, where we reduce the barriers to entry so you can own your own first property business in Bali safely and securely. Don't forget to stick around to the end of the podcast because our guest may or may not have a little gift for you. All right, hey guys, welcome to Bali Unplugged, your local guide to understanding the Bali business landscape from tourism, property, and experiences, and everything else you need to know coming to Indonesia. And today we have a very special guest on, Miss Kara Wang. She was a project manager and user experience designer in the US, and she's basically moved over to Bali. Her family owns and operates residential real estate in the US, Texas. So, Kara, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for the introduction. Yeah, I would love to share a little bit about myself. So, hi, everybody. I'm Kara. I was born in China, even though everyone locally thinks I'm Indonesian. Surprise. I moved to Canada when I was 2, grew up there, and then moved to Texas around 10 and went to college there, studied marketing, then moved to New York and DC for the past 7 years for work. Yeah, and I worked in corporate finance for 7 years, and it was really took a beating on me, but it was, a great opportunity to work with really intelligent people all over the U.S. And then eventually kind of get my foot in the door into owning and starting my own real estate business.
Nice. Okay. So, with all of that, tell us a little bit about your childhood. What was like growing up with your parents? What did they do, and how did that shape you as a person today?
Yeah, totally. So I grew up as an immigrant child, right? My family packed their bags when I was 2, moved to Canada and America with, no money at all. And they worked incredibly hard, starting, when I was really young. So I kind of watched them build their wealth from nothing. So it was not always the easiest of living experiences, right? Coming from not a lot, but it really grounded me and made me humble and ultimately gave me a lot of self-independence and energy as well to, work hard and kind of come and become the person that I am today. But my parents were obviously Chinese. They were somewhat disciplined towards me, in terms of, you need to go to school
That
and
those
study
the
something
tiger mom and
smart.
tiger dad.
Exactly, like you can relate.
If you don't
So,
come home with A++, then you're grounded.
yeah, exactly. And I was always like, okay, well, I knew I was a little bit of a nut back in the day, but I had that kind of unnerving pressure from my parents to kind of make myself something because I watched them do the same growing up as an immigrant in the US.
Yeah. How do you feel that has shaped your success? Obviously having a tiger mom and tiger dad.
Actually, my parents weren't ultra tiger, they were tiger light. But a lot of my
Tiger
own
life.
success just comes from you know, my own work ethic that I kind of started at a young age. And I also always had like a bit of a hustle mentality from like selling, stock in the Neopet stock market to selling cookies and making keychains and selling them around my neighborhood.
Wow.
I always just knew I wanted more. And I really had a passion for people. I love talking to people, getting to know everybody and understanding, what makes them tick and what makes them buy my stuff. And just compounding
Wow.
all these things, you just want to grow and become a better version and a better salesperson of yourself.
Wow. So you really had like a little hustler upbringing. So where about was it? Did you say New York that you grew up?
No, I mostly grew up in Texas,
In
actually.
Texas.
So, down south where the
Down south.
yeehaw is
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. So do you feel that that the Texan culture was sort of what harbored your entrepreneurship?
I
Was it
wouldn't
more
say
so?
necessarily. I will say I did go to business school at UT Austin, so that kind of paved a huge path for me. Even just starting my career in finance, I wouldn't have gotten this job had I not, studied business and had a
Wow.
lot of really amazing connections. But it wasn't honestly until I got to the East Coast where I was like, whoa, like
Mm.
people here are always working and they work a lot. So it was a very competitive culture that I was like thrown abruptly into in
Yep.
my early years, in my early 20s.
Mm. Okay. 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 So the next question, Kara, is do you have a dream?
Well, as Martin Luther King said, and as Kara Wang says also, I have dreams. For sure, definitely. I mean, my dream for a long time, ever since I started working in corporate at 22, was to be financially independent.
Mm.
Um, I saw a lot of my friends and their families, especially women in their household, getting divorced and whatnot. And it's a tough reality we live in, right? And so, my dream was like, okay, I don't want to be able to depend solely on one human. And I want to be able to make choices for myself, especially financially. And then, one day I wanted to own my own business and just really create the life that I dreamed of and not what society kind of expects, right? Because when you live in America, you definitely live in a bubble of, this is like the XYZ steps to being happy. And then you get promoted and you make $10,000 more and you're like, wow, like I'm supposed to be really happy, but I'm slaving away, in a really technical job that I hate with people that I really wish I didn't have to interact with. And that was just what I realized was not the life that I wanted,
Mhm.
for now at least.
Nice. Okay, cool. So, how did you end up living in Bali? Tell us that story.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've actually been nomadic for the past 5 years. So I've, traveled all around the world, 51 countries. Every single summer or winter, I spent it, either kite surfing in South Africa or,
Wow.
hiking in the summer. Yeah, so I've done a lot of traveling, and when I was young, I also lived in Asia. But the only thing is that I couldn't go to Asia because I was working remotely
Mm.
9 to 5. And so the time zone never worked for me. And Bali had always been a dream. And everyone was like, wow, Bali, the energy is magnetic. Like the people are incredible. You have to go. It's like, and I'm a slightly beach city girly. So when I left my job, my friend and I, we came to Bali initially just for a month, and now I find myself here 5 months, loving mostly all the seconds of it. Obviously, no place is perfect, but this has felt very homey for me as a
Mm.
nomadic traveler for the past 5 years. And that's kind of where I am now at this stage. I've just turned 29, Pisces,
Oh,
and
nice.
kind of just figuring it out. Yeah.
Still a baby.
I mentally don't feel it anymore after, doing as much as I have in this world. But trying to keep the vibe.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so out of all the places you've been, 5 years of being of a nomad, is Bali the longest place that you've been able to sort of put your roots into the ground, or is it getting there? It's getting to be one of those places.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would definitely say it's getting there. I also like to base myself in New York, where, a lot of my friends are, my community is, and just the summers in New York are just full of fun, chaos, energy. I also spend a lot of time in Barcelona, and yeah, Bali is looking like my kind of third spot. It's getting there, and now that I'm building, I'm like, well, now I have to be here.
Yeah, exactly. You can't exactly chase the summer so much. So
There's only
beautiful.
so many summers.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we sort of touched upon what initially attracted to Bali, and sort of what's keeping you here. Obviously, you've got a build going on. Tell us a bit more about your current build.
Yeah, totally. So right now I am building 5 villas in Tumbuk Bayou. So I bought the land a few months ago. And yeah, it'll be a really beautiful project. I have, trees in the backyard that are kind of coming in. So it'll be very like lush, tropical oasis vibes, and creating like a very open mezzanine style 2 bedroom.
Mm,
It'll be kind of Balinese meets like Bohemian. I'm really trying to skew away from like the Mediterranean Tulum style
mm.
that has kind of been flooding Bali for a bit,
Oh,
and
it
just give it
has
more of
been.
an earthy, yeah, more earthy, like more back to the roots. Like, where are we? We're not in Tulum. We're not in the Mediterranean. We're in Bali. Like, let's, make that.
Mm. Nice. So doing this build, I see that it's allowing you to really unleash your creativity. And I guess you are probably more, what is it, left-brained as opposed to right-brained. Instead of running numbers, you prefer like designing. Is this accurate?
It's interesting actually because yeah, my whole life I've been an artist, right? When I've started to draw, dance, play piano, flute since I was 5.
Mm,
And it wasn't really until I came into corporate and actually my job when I was working corporate finance, I was designing performance testing, pipelining software for
wow.
developers. And it's probably the most technical design a designer can design because most people don't understand the product. You need to understand development. So, during this process, I really like honed in on my process skills, my technical skills, and became more of a systematic thinker, even though that wasn't really who I was. But it helped a lot because, it bridged a lot of the gaps that I was missing. And it helped my growth as well. So now I'm quite balanced. I feel very balanced that I can use both types of learnings in my
Yep.
everyday life.
Nice, nice. So, by you living here in Bali, does that mean you're just investing, or are you also working remotely? I assume that you're doing sort of both.
Yeah, so you're not supposed to work in Bali, whatever. But so I also run my own design agency and freelance studio.
Mm.
So I'm obviously a US based
You're looking for
designer.
clients in the US. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I have some clients from New York, San Francisco, and some local clients as well. So I'm like much of a night owl, which I always naturally was, having,
Yep.
being a crazy creative, but it's really made days a bit different for me.
So next question. You've pretty much answered that one, which is how do you balance your professional and personal life in Bali? I mean, you've got so many things going on. What are some of the unique challenges that you've faced with working, um, from the living in Bali and basically looking at your investments?
Well, interesting. Are you talking from a financial standpoint?
I'm talking about your personal energy output. Where do you cut up the time?
Okay. How do I balance my time?
Yeah.
Well,
And your
if
energy, and
anyone,
your energy, obviously.
yeah, of course. I mean, if anyone's ever lived in New York, you know that New Yorkers, we work hard and we play harder. And there's a lot of really cool, fun activities every single night in Bali happening. And life is a balance, like I'm in my 20s now. I'm not going to be in my 20s forever. And I know like this is like my time to have fun, but
Mm,
also I want to build something for myself. So, it's all about being able to say no to events that, don't really give you value, and saying yes to maybe potentially meeting people that can help you accelerate in, your endeavors, like yourself, Chris, right? We met at a real estate event, and that for me is kind of fun. Like I think networking is a fun challenge. You can get
mm.
to know people, and also they can help you, um, in whatever industry you do, and especially in real estate in Bali. Golly, there's not a lot of information out there, that's for sure.
Oh, exactly, exactly. I found that living in Bali, you really have to go and find these things tangibly to be able to like get in touch with the community. Okay, so I do have another question here. Is how has Bali influenced your personal growth and development?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Bali is so different than really where I've lived before. There's a very unique energy here that you can't really find anywhere else. And Bali is really grounded in its yin, which has been
Mm,
very interesting for me because, coming from New York corporate hustle culture,
mm.
I found myself so deeply rooted in my masculine. Um, and
Elaborate on the yin for the layman, for the people who may not understand.
Yeah, so like in feng shui, there's yin and yang, and yin is generally the more feminine, the softness, the slowing down and like taking time to process, where the yang is more masculine energy, driven, hardworking, brute. So I feel like in a way, Bali has allowed me to find a little bit more of my femininity, slow down in different areas of my life where I felt like I had to just keep up, to have this or that, do this or do this. I mean,
Keeping
even
up
though I
with the
still do
Joneses. Yep.
that, but in a different capacity where I feel like it's better geared to my energy and I can conserve my own energy better.
Oh, beautiful. So give me one amazing little productivity hack that you can share with the viewers.
Hmm. Productivity hack. Ooh. Okay. Productivity hack for me is outsource. That's like one thing I think is really, I mean, being a, ex-project manager and scrum master, um, it's really important to know the value of your time. And if you can put an hourly rate on your time, which you
Mm.
can say, okay, is this task that could take me 3 hours that I could hire someone on, some virtual assistant site to do, and you could save that time and use that time either for yourself, which is really valuable as an adult, or put it back into more technical things in your business that no one else can do for you. So you would not believe like how much time you save, how much money you can save if you value your own time.
I think that's a massive realization that a lot of people who are coming to Bali and really forging their entrepreneurial journey it's one of the most common themes, especially here, learning the cultural differences between the Balinese, the Indonesians, the Bule, even different cultures, is that to understand where your time and value is worth it. Could I hire someone else to do these sort of things for me?
Exactly. Mhm.
Yep.
And for them, it's like you're employing them, right? So you're helping them,
Yep.
your dollar goes so far in their country
Yep.
as well. And people are hardworking, right? If you give them some money, people will work hard for you. Um, and you have to treat them right. You have to nurture those relationships as well if they want to continue working for you. And that's what entrepreneurs need to realize, that you can't do everything, right? I have so many people coming to me being like, hey, Kara, like I'm trying to do my own website, but like it's hard. I'm like, yeah, because building a really beautiful, good website that works responsive on tablet, mobile, it took 7 years for me to learn. It isn't
Oh,
like, you snap your
7 years.
fingers.
That's like a degree and
Well,
a half.
it depends on the level
Doctorate.
of, design technicality that you want
Yep.
to exhibit, right?
Mm,
And for me, the caliber is high, right? Coming from New York, and
mm,
working in like a large financial institution where millions and millions of people are looking at your product. It has to be the utmost like perfection.
mm.
Um, so coming to an expert seriously like saves you time because you might be paying more upfront, but this like product that we're offering, right, will last you 10 years versus like a year or two where then like there's a new whatever thing that comes out and makes it outdated.
What's that? I remember because I have my auntie works in fashion, right? And she mentioned to me a quote that she pulled out, and it was to do with trends, the style, and fashion. If something's fashionable, it's just like um, it'll go in and out of fashion like by season. But if it's stylish, it's something that's
Yeah.
going to be in, you know, in state for like,
Yeah.
you know, for generations to come.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Iconic. We always call it iconic. Yeah.
is it iconic?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
like that's what happens with a lot of brands that have like stood the
mm,
test of time, right? If you
that's right.
create something iconic,
Mm,
it will last a lifetime and your brand will continue to excel because, with this current like, you know, attention span
attention
culture, like,
economy. Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. You have to keep staying on, but if you build
Mm,
you have to foreshadow where your product is going to go. Although it's
exactly.
business
Like
talk.
how the application will work. Eh? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So this leads me to my next question is, can you share with me an experience where you've had to really adapt to the cultural difference, you know, in Bali?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I will say when I first came to Bali, I thought there would be a lot more Indonesians. And obviously, I'm Asian as well. So, I can relate to some of the more like friendly passivity, openness. And I was really surprised to see the amount of, diversity in Bali and especially the influence of Eastern European culture here from, the Ukrainians and Russians. And,
Mm,
like, I don't get me wrong, I have a lot of really incredible Eastern European friends, but generally their culture brings a bit of like intensity or coldness that as a
hard.
fellow Texan New Yorker, I wasn't used to being in the girls' locker room and being like, hi, like my name's Kara. And they're like, why are you looking at me?
Why are you
So just
talking
getting
to me?
used to that. Yeah, why are you talking to me? And I'm like, I just want to be friendly, make friends
I
in
just want to get
Bali.
to know you, Jesus.
Yeah, and like you think that's the energy that you come into in Bali, right? You come here because people are integrated in the community and it's open, but
Mm,
also you have to think about it when there's lots of diverse differences around. That
mm,
also creates cultural gaps as
mm,
well. So there aren't a lot of Americans here, and I mean, frankly, like there's a good chunk of my friends are American, but a lot of it in the end is depends on like who you share your energy with and who wants to give that back to you.
mm. So, but you know, based on off this conversation here, um, what advice would you have for, you know, Americans and Canadians looking and considering to moving to Bali? Because it's quite a huge flight for you.
It's tough, like I wanted to actually go back. I actually was supposed to, instead of staying in Bali, go to Brazil for Carnival and then go back home to visit my
Carnival.
family. Was supposed to, but didn't. Um, yeah, and I couldn't, it was just too exhausting, like 40
Mm,
hours. But I mean, honestly, like, from someone that has lived through it all, it's worth it. I can't believe it took me until I was 29 to visit Bali, and it was on my dream for the longest time. And it was
yeah.
just like a long flight. I didn't want to take vacation, whatever. And the second I did it, I was like, damn, I wish I had come here so much earlier. There was so much opportunity, missed learnings, interesting people that I could have learned about earlier in my travels. But I
Mm,
mean, I obviously don't regret anything. I traveled a lot,
mm,
but Bali is great. Really, it's truly a special place. There is nothing like it in the world, and that's why it was voted like one of the number one tourist destinations a year or two ago.
So I got another question here, Cara. You know, you being sort of disconnected from your community in the US and in Canada, how do you stay in touch with them? And also, how do you you know, how do you stay plugged into the community here in Bali? Obviously, we've met at some real estate gigs. What else are you interested in, and how do you plug into that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I feel very privileged to live in these technological times where we can use social media and different messaging platforms to really stay connected. I have a very beautiful group of friends based in the US. Many of them I met traveling abroad. And, you know, I'll go to the US every year to spend time with them. And I'll share all my trials, tribulations, and successes with them. And, you know, they're very supportive because I think in the end, it's like if you have a really true connection with your tribe, then distance is just, you know, it's nothing, right? Especially when they come visit you, which is all the time. I'm just like, stop visiting me.
I need to work. I need to do the things I need to do.
I need to work. I have a life here. And I was like, I'm coming to Bali. And I'm like,
it's
okay,
constant
I'm excited.
holidays.
I want to be excited to see you, but I know I'm gonna have to work more when you leave.
Look, I get it all the time. Everyone keeps coming visiting me. I'm like, oh my goodness. I thought you were not coming back here for another couple of months.
I know. I was like, again? Seriously?
Well, that's crazy that you get so many visitors, considering you're American, and you know, for us Australians, it's only what, a 3 to 6 hour flight, depending on which city you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just if you live in a cool place and you're a cool person, I think people will just kind of gravitate no matter the distance, really.
Can you tell us a time when you faced a significant challenge in Bali and how you overcame it?
Oh, okay, that's a good one. It's hard to say because, you know, Bali is such a easy place to live. Truly, it is. Um, and so anything that I say in retrospect to anyone's lives is not that significant. And I feel like it's still a very first world problem. I will say, like, you know, my most stressful times in Bali have a lot to do with my real estate project, right? Where, you know, things are not going right, you're under a time crunch. You know, there's a lot of information and pieces that are unknown, and it can be really exhausting and very stressful. You know, at some times I was overburdened with stress, like trying to figure it out, and, you know, being pressured by third party external influences, you know, like my contractor, landlord, etc., to hurry up, do this, do that, issues with the land, etc., etc. It's like a whole process. So, but nothing.
I sense some of the things that I would have that I've been feeling, especially, you know, talking to landlords and owners, and even negotiating, you know, possible deals, is that sometimes agents or these owners, they can get a little aggressive. Is this
Yes.
is this a feeling that
Yes.
you're like, as in, like, they're really pushy to, like, is this done? And it's like, well, hang on, we haven't even come to a deal yet.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, you know, when there's a lot of influx of money, especially in the third world, like you can see it in many other countries, especially like, for example, Egypt, right? It changes the local mentality as well. And people become greedy. And so when people become greedy, people start lying, and you just don't always know who to trust, if someone's best interest is in your hands or if they're trying to make a quick buck, right? So there are a lot of things to consider, you know, especially in going into a field that's a bit unknown. I mean, for me, like getting into real estate took me living here like 4 months and understanding the market, you know, enjoying the place myself, being like, okay, like there's potential here. And you're going to get a lot of information. And because it's still such a new boom that's happening, there's not that much out there, really. And there's not a lot of really great sources. And you just have to rely on people that you have good connections with, that you feel like you can trust, and go with your gut. You know, even when I bought this land, I got advice from a friend that I had just met, and I wasn't sure, you know, I wanted to fact check with everyone I'd met. But in the end, like, you just have to take that.
What's your instinct say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad women have really good intuitions.
Yeah, you know, I get this a lot, especially when I'm speaking to the females on the podcast, and the girls are always telling me, you know, go with your gut. And it's something that I've had to, like, really learn, is like, you know, when I'm trying to cut a deal with someone, I'm like, I don't know if I feel good with the way this person is doing business. I think I might
Exactly.
leave this deal on the table, because there's so many deals that come on the table every single day of the week. So it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Go with your gut. I mean, use your head, right? Process all the numbers and the facts, but then in the end, trust your gut.
Mm.
And worst things, you're not going to die. Worst comes to worst. You might lose some money, but money is always, you can always find money, but you can't always, find opportunities sometimes when they arise.
Exactly. Or even like your reputation. So a lot of times, people will skew their reputation just to make a quick buck, and it's like, oh no, that's not a good way to do business. So
Not in a small place like Bali, you will be found, really. So,
exactly. So how has your perspective on life and business changed since moving to Bali?
yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. It's one definitely that I've thought about for a while. Um, I will say because like Bali is quote unquote the digital nomad hub of maybe the world. Don't
Mm,
know any other bigger ones. It's made me realize that like in life, there isn't just the standard path that you see the West portrays either in media or in society, where you can really choose your own path, at least when it comes to uh, a financial means, right? Because
mm,
I never lived in a single place where there were so many people making money off of being coaches, OnlyFans models, e-commerce, you know, real estate. You can really if you get creative and you have a thirst for making money and being successful,
mm,
you'll find your niche, right? Because everybody has their skills. And if you hone into it, you can find your place. I mean, I was lost a bit for a while. Like, do I still want to do UX? Do I want to get back into sales or
mm,
project? And then when this real estate project kind of fell into my lap, thanks to a couple of incredible people that I met that, you know, were able to share some insights and information about projects
mm,
they had done. I was
mm,
like, okay, this is a really cool direction.
mm,
And, I'm blessed enough to have been able to save a lot of money, working 9 to 5 in the US and traveling in third world countries, that I could afford to buy land and build here in Bali. And it's, compared to the US, it's way, way, way more approachable.
mm.
But it's also more unknown. So you
I,
learn a
I
lot about business.
I guess the good thing about this for you is that it's not too far of a jump, because your family is involved in property
Yeah.
in the US. So, you know, I guess you can bounce these ideas back off family back at home.
Um, I would say yes and no. I mean, my family wasn't the most like, uh, yeah, go and invest in a market that we don't understand, because as Asians, like, we took risks, right, to immigrate and build our businesses. But the problem is that there's a lot of extremely calculated risks that
Mm,
the culture entails. And so this for me was like, okay, it's going to be my own venture.
mm,
And I need to make sure the facts for myself line up, because I don't think my family's not helping me fund my project really at all.
mm,
It's, on my own. And once I lined up all the stones and it felt right for me, I just had to go with my intuition. And I think that's one beautiful thing that America has really taught people, is to take risks, right, in
mm,
life. Not like stupid, dumb risks where you like hurt yourself, but calculated risks where you feel like there's potential and you're not gonna, you can mitigate as well. So that's kind of the deal that I've found, at least with my project.
Yeah, so to sort of summarize what you're saying is, the biggest thing there is, being able to take the risk but mitigate as much of the risk as possible.
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Like,
So, so what's one of the biggest misconceptions about living in Bali that you had previously, and how would you address them for those who are watching this?
um, yeah, I mean, I would say two things actually. So you think you come to Bali and you're going to be chilling a lot. You actually find yourself in a community of extremely hardworking people, working online, even working more hours than 9 to 5 to sustain this life of what we call freedom, right? Whatever that means to people, right? I mean, we're still giving our time away, but it's for ourselves. So people are willing to work more for it. So you'll find a lot of like incredibly intelligent people coming, from big cities all over the world. Other people in real estate from different countries come, and they have like this kind of dream and energy to create something for themselves and a life for themselves. And Bali really offers that. A lot of like-minded folks that are very driven, which I was surprised, and I think that's ultimately what kept me here. And it's not the infrastructure, because we know God shit, there's no sidewalks.
Yes.
Oh, I'm such a city girl, like it kills me.
Look at the bubble.
I'm like, ugh. So there's that, and then the second thing about Bali, shoot, I just like had it in my head.
You had a brain fart.
Wait, so I was talking about, what was the question again?
What was some of the biggest misconceptions living in Bali, and how would you address them?
Okay. Okay. All right. And the second one I would say is, Bali's like a chill, like, dirt cheap island. Actually, Bali itself is kind of marketed as a very like high-end luxury place to live with island vibes. So you'll see very expensive boutiques and hotels, like, thousands of dollars a night, villas for sale. And
Crazy.
people definitely dress it. They look the part.
Mm.
People come from very wealthy countries, bring in a lot of money here. So you will meet, I met celebrities here, DJs, people
No.
of incredible value, which has been incredible as well. Because I think because in New York, for example, to get to those people, it takes like tons of steps. It's really hard to, kind of be able to just meet who you want to meet in New York, versus in Bali, everyone's very accessible if you put in the work. And it helps if you're a girl, to be honest.
You get that girl leverage. All right.
Yeah.
So, Kara, what are some of your favorite things to do in Bali, both for work and for pleasure?
Mhm. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. For pleasure wise, I love my gym. Honestly, it's one of the best parts I've discovered about Bali. I like to stay active. It helps me, keep up like physically and mentally. And going to the gym at Nirvana, which is where I go, has a beautiful community where I found all my friends, great calisthenic classes that I've never been able to find anywhere else. So I know it sounds funny that I'm like, oh, I like going to the gym, but truly going to the gym is a very different experience in Bali.
Oh, it's a different
It's a
experience.
life. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lifestyle.
and it's much more expensive than it would be back at home. I don't know if
Yeah,
it
I
is
was
for you
like,
guys, but
oh,
in Australia,
absolutely.
it's dirt cheap.
I mean, in America, you pay like what, $20 a month for Planet Fitness, and
Here
at
it's like
Nirvana, you
250.
pay over $250 for a month. You get your ass to the gym every day. You better make the
It really
value.
motivates you. It's like, oh shit, I better not waste my
Yeah.
membership.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, is there
Oh,
anything else that you do besides, obviously gym and, don't want to label you as a gym
um,
junkie, so
yeah, I mean, I also really enjoy dancing, and I tattoo as well. So these are just other hobbies that I've kind of kept throughout my travels in my life.
so
So I love
you found
tattooing my
dancing
friends.
classes. You found dancing classes here in Bali?
Yeah, there's a lot of really awesome dance studios from incredible teachers from around the world. So you really get a different taste um,
What are
of
you
like
doing?
how the
Salsa,
teachers.
merengue, tango?
I dance a lot of different things. So I like salsa, bachata, but I also used to dance like commercial hip hop,
Yeah.
jazz. There's a lot of different options here, which is really awesome. And classes are very affordable, unlike back in New York where you pay $30 just to drop in a class.
Mm.
you'd pay a whole month for that of classes.
Okay, so we know that you do gym. We know that there's some pretty decent classes for dance. What else?
Hmm, really good question.
Beach walks. Do
Beach,
you
I
actually
mean,
do you go out to do like any of the nature stuff? Do you do like obviously like the mountains or
yeah, I mean, I've hiked a couple of volcanoes here, actually in West Java, like Mount Bromo and Lujin, and been to the Komodo Islands. I feel like it's funny because like for 5 years you know, did so much nature stuff. Like I spent 5 weeks living in Alaska, hiking in Denali National Park and all over the US, like wilderness backpacking. I did Kilimanjaro last year. So like
wow.
when I came to Bali, I wanted to not be outside as much. Ironically, I wanted to actually be able to focus
I wanted to
on
dial
something
in.
that I was building. Because when I was working corporate, like I didn't have to, right? I could just work, close my laptop, and go fuck around. Now I'm like, okay, I'm building something, so I have to be a lot more disciplined.
So so basically to summarize what you've been saying is that that coming to Bali has really sort of shifted your perspective into becoming a lot more disciplined and dialed in to what you're doing and building something for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And it helps that like the cost of living here is so low. Like if I
Mm.
wanted, I could do nothing and live here for years and years, but
Mm.
that gets boring
It's
also.
fine. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So on that, this leads me to the next question, which is, how do you manage your finances in Bali? What are some of the unique aspects of living in Bali, from the financial perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from a financial perspective, actually, Bali is not as cheap as I thought it was going to be. I mean, you can make it very cheap, but it can be comparable to sometimes the cost of living in Europe, for example,
Mm.
especially in housing, right? If you want to be comfortable, live in a villa, you're looking at paying at least $1,000 a month. If
Mm.
you want to live in a guest house with with like a room and maybe like a garden, but you have to share the space, you might be paying half that. But
Mm.
obviously, like you're coming to Bali, you want to live in these beautiful, luxurious villas,
Yeah.
or makes you feel connected to nature. So, you have to consider that. But other than that, like food is, super cheap. You can get a meal for like $3, or you can go out to a really nice restaurant and pay $10, $15, which is honestly like less than a cost of a drink in the city, like in New York.
Yeah.
And then activities are also extremely affordable. I mean, I back in New York, I was like, why do I want to pay $80 to get my nails done and my $80 for my lashes? I skipped all of that, right? Because I thought it was unnecessary for the cost. But here, like, because it's so cheap and accessible, these things are like really nice to have, especially as a woman, right? It makes you feel more feminine and more beautiful, and cost isn't an inhibitor on that.
You're allowed to have those luxuries because of the the cost price ratio compared to the
Exactly.
living expenses. Mm.
Mhm.
All right, cool. So we're on the last couple of questions.
All
Now,
right.
how do you see Bali's future in terms of both its economy and its role as a global hub for entrepreneurship and creativity?
It's incredible. Bali is growing at unbelievable rates. It is so you can put up like a
Did you just
building.
did you just say it's incredible?
Incredibly, yeah, but I guess I could make that
So
incredibly.
that's a dad joke, yeah.
No, I mean Bali's growing at unbelievable speeds. It takes 8 months to build a home, which is unbelievable. Um, and like there are huge new developments that are being built every day, and it's expanding, all the way down the east,
Mm.
west, sorry, the west, and in the east as well. So I think every year will look different. And I just came here, what, 6 months ago, and people have been saying, the areas that we're living in now that are trendy didn't even exist a few years ago. So you
Mm.
can imagine, Indonesia being what, the seventh like fastest growing economy and country, it's
Well,
just
the
going to get
fastest growing middle
crazy.
class as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And prices are going up because people, there's demand, right? There's demand for this sort of alternative way of life that is affordable, brings very attractive, either spiritual, health driven, fun driven people, and a community that you can't find anywhere else in the world. Really, you can't. Like, trust me, I've spent time like in the Red Sea in Egypt where I felt was a similar energy. But it isn't growing like it is here, and
Yeah,
it's not as accessible, and there's less amenities and luxuries that you can have for very little in Bali.
exactly. All right, Kara. So, finally, what advice would you give for someone who's looking to start a business in Bali?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. Well, first, get your legalities in place. So you should apply for an investor's quitas to make sure you're legally able to conduct business, because um, you know, if you're coming to someone else's country, you might as well stick to the rules.
Mm,
And then after that, I would say really network, especially because, if let's say you're starting an online business, like a tech startup, you've got a great product, you're going to need other people to help you push that product, especially if you don't have experience building businesses. And I think this is an incredible place to meet people that are doing the same thing, because almost everybody, there's not a lot of corporations here. You don't see like, oh, there's JP Morgan or,
yep.
etc. So you can't really just apply for these corporate jobs. Everyone's basically doing their own business, their own venture in order to live this lifestyle. And so people are also really willing to help each other, because it's like a full circle. It's a
Yeah.
community that keeps on giving. And I think once you establish that network, which I was fortunate to do, I felt like I had a really great place to do business here.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of the times people are trying to start out businesses here, and it's hard to find people who are honest, and you know because they feel like they want to show that, oh, I've done all this stuff, but in reality they're just starting out too. And once you find that out, it's like, okay, it's hard to backpedal from that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, most people in Bali are starting,
Mm,
or they've decided that they just want to chill a bit.
yeah.
But it's a great place for people to find each other that are in the same place.
Mm,
And I think it breeds that energy, and it's what keeps people here. It's what, helps you find others that are like myself. I found both of my co-founders here,
mm.
and, they come from also very Western, like technical knowledge and know-how, and we've all been able to kind of utilize each other's different skills to build things, and find different ways to make money and survive.
It's super important to have those communities to be able to like forge those connections with your networks, which is a beautiful thing about Bali. So, Kara, before we hop off the podcast, it has been an amazing, the last hour with you. If people wanted to reach out to you, what do you have for offer for them, or how can they reach you, and what kind of plugs do you want to give?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for that. If you want to reach out to me, you can send me a message on Instagram. I'm literally at Kara Wang, which ironically is a region in West Java, Indonesia. So I
No.
knew this for years as I got my username, and people would message me everything in like Bahasa. And I'm like, finally, and everyone I talk to that's Indonesian, I'm like, oh, I'm Kara Wang. They're like, oh, like here, like in Indonesia. I'm like, yeah. The funniest shit ever. Um,
You got your own
or
city
yeah,
named after you. Yeah.
yeah, just reach out to me there. I mean, I'm a very open and caring and generous person, especially with my time and information. So if you have any questions about real estate,
Mm.
building a business, traveling in general, I try to post as much content as possible, but your girl's fucking busy, so not influencer level.
On a corporate level. All right, beautiful. Kara, You have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for jumping on the podcast. And thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for tuning into the Bali Unplugged podcast. This episode was sponsored by BaliPropertyFinance.com, where we reduce your barriers of entry so you can easily acquire a property business in Bali.